Hey, Family Life Church, thank you guys for joining me tonight. And I'm really excited about what I'm going to talk about and really hope that you'll take a few moments, put aside everything that might distract you, and just listen to your pastor for the next 10 or 15 minutes. We're in a sermon series here at our church, and the sermon series is entitled Prepared. And what we've been talking about is this idea that whatever comes next, whatever this pandemic means, whatever it is that we are going through in our world right now, whether this is the end times or whether this is just a foretaste of the end times, whether the Antichrist is here or whether just the spirit of the Antichrist is here, we, as the people of God, should be prepared to be what God needs us to be in this day and in this hour and in our culture. And so we've been reading through 1 Thessalonians 5, and we've been talking about an end-time checklist that Paul gave that church. But if you look at 1 Thessalonians, you'll notice that this church was beginning to lose heart. They were going through a very difficult time. They were finding themselves in a very difficult situation. The Bible tells us, and history reveals for us, that the Christians in Thessalonica were being persecuted. They had their property that was being seized. They had workers that were being stopped from practicing their trades. Those who had found this new faith in Jesus called Christianity were being shunned by their families. They were being insulted. Some of them were even being beaten. Some of them were even being put into prison. And tragically, some of them were even being put to death. They were experiencing what anyone would call the worst kind of persecution. And Paul is deeply concerned about this church and what they're going through and how these trials and tribulations and what the effect would be on these Christians in Thessalonica. And so in 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, Paul says this. The chapter opens up. Paul's been talking to this church in this letter that he wrote to them. And finally he said in 1 Thessalonians 3 and verse number 1, he said this. He said, so when we could stand it no longer. Like Paul said, you know what, when we just got to the end of, we've heard enough stories, we've heard enough things that are going wrong, we just can't take it any longer. I mean, this is something that needs to be addressed. It's something that needs to be talked about. Paul said this, here's what we did. When we could take it no longer, Paul said in verse 2 that we sent Timothy, who is our brother and co-worker in God's service, in spreading the gospel of Christ. And Paul said we sent Timothy with this purpose in mind. We sent Timothy to strengthen and encourage you in your faith. You know what, church? Hard situations require someone to have clarity. Difficult situations require there to be somebody that can speak into the chaos and confusion with clarity to strengthen us and encourage us what God is up to in our life. Difficult times call for someone with strength and conviction to do something. And so, as your pastor, man, that's what I want to do here for the next couple minutes. I want to strengthen and encourage you. I want to speak into the chaos of your life. I want to speak into the conflict that might be happening in your heart. And I want to say this to you. God is with us. Come on, church. You need to know that God is on our side. God has a plan. He's not surprised by this pandemic. He's not surprised by all the tension going on in our country. God has a plan. And you know what? You need to know this. God said He'll never leave us nor forsake us. Come on, church. What a promise to have from God, that He said He'll never leave us nor forsake us. Listen, that's what Timothy did for that church. He arrived to encourage them and to challenge them and to inspire them to keep on keeping on. Let me just ask you, those out there tonight, Do you need encouragement? Do you need somebody to strengthen you? Can you recognize in your own heart and in your own spirit that, man, I'm really low and I'm really beat down, and in my spirit I'm really not where I should be? Listen, tonight your pastor's speaking to you, and I want to encourage you and I want to strengthen you to let you know that God is on your side. You know, the vision of our church here at Family Life is this. It's simply stated this way: we want to introduce people to the real Jesus. That's what we want to do. Those who are here at our church, we want to introduce them to the real Jesus. And those that don't have a church, we want to introduce them to the real Jesus. And so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to introduce people to the real Jesus. And we want to, first of all, introduce you that call this church your home. We want to, on a weekly basis and on a daily basis, continually be introducing you to a real Jesus that will be there in the middle of your real problems, to be a real God for you in the middle of them. We want to continually and consistently be introducing you to a God that loves you, to a Jesus who wants to meet you at the point of your need. We don't want church to turn into no more than rituals and traditions. We don't want, as the Bible said, to have a form of godliness but deny the power of God. We don't want to be, as the book of Revelation said of that church in Laodicea, we don't want to be a lukewarm church. We want to be a church that is consistently introducing people to the real Jesus. As real problems arise, listen, the word of the Lord is, we have a real Jesus that wants to meet us in the middle of those real problems. When real situations happen, when real difficulties come, we serve a real God who wants to meet us in a real way, to be a real Jesus in our current lives. And so we want the power of God and the presence of Jesus to show up in our church every week. We want Jesus to show up in our families. We want Jesus to show up in our lives to challenge us and to convict us and to encourage us to keep on keeping on, to move us and to keep us moving in the direction that God has planned for us. And so, number one, we want those of you that call this church your home, we want to consistently be introducing you to the real Jesus through church on Sunday and through our small groups and through our prayer groups. We want to encourage you. But number two, we want to introduce those who don't know Jesus, your friends, your co-workers, your neighbors, people that don't know Jesus in a real way. We want to introduce them to a real Jesus. They might have a ugly story or a bad experience with church, and we want to let them know that, you know what, that wasn't Jesus. There's a real Jesus that loves you and cares about you and wants to become your Savior. He wants to meet you and forgive your sins and start a relationship with you that will transform your heart. Listen, what we're doing here at Family Life is not just a set of religious beliefs or doctrinal points. We want people to begin a relationship with a real God who died for their sins and rose from the grave on their behalf and is looking to transform their minds and to heal their hearts and to begin something brand new in their life. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to introduce people on a daily and weekly basis to the real Jesus. Now, this pandemic has made accomplishing this vision difficult. And like Paul in 1 Thessalonians 3, listen, let me just be honest with you. I can't stand it any longer. I mean, I've had it up to here with all of the changing of the dynamics and what you can do and can't do and the pandemic taking over and fear and doubt and people getting disconnected. Listen, let me just be honest with you. I can't take it any longer. And so I'm coming to you tonight with a stirred up heart and with the heart of a pastor with a burden. And listen, I want to meet you at the point of where you are right now. And I want to encourage you. Come on, church. I can't take it any longer. And I pray that you'll lean in. If somebody doesn't hear this, I pray you'll call them on the phone and tell them, you got to hear Pastor Rob. I mean, he's fired up and he's stirred up on he can't take it any longer. Because listen, we need to start moving in God's direction. And I want to encourage you and I want to challenge you. And listen to me. I want to ask you to lean in and begin to connect with me. That we can't just stay disconnected any longer. We can't just be without the go in our weekly activities or the together in our weekly lives. We gotta do life together. Our purpose, our vision is to introduce people to the real Jesus. And this pandemic has disconnected us and isolated us and caused us to not be together, and it's made it difficult to know if we're accomplishing our vision. So hear me today. Here's my challenge to you. And here, as your pastor, what I'm calling you to do. Number one, you'll see it here on the screens. I want to connect with you and hear where you're at. Come on, pandemic, whatever it is, wherever you're at, I want to get on the phone and I want to hear where you're at. I want to start an email conversation, whatever it is, I want to hear where you're at. Listen, if I haven't been able to connect with you, send me an email and a text. Listen, we got to stay connected. You need to get connected with other people, but it starts with us. And so, first of all, listen, I want to connect with you. That's what you need to hear. I can't take it any longer, and somehow, some way, we have got to connect. Okay? So hear me today. And here's my challenge to you as a pastor. Number one, I want to connect with you and hear where you're at. And then number two, I want to ask you to make a move towards God and engage with me in helping our church accomplish our vision. Listen, I want you to move in God's direction. I want you to engage by helping us do church with excellence. I want you to engage. Listen, this is number two, what I'm asking you to do. Help us to do church with excellence, okay, by getting involved. Okay, come on, I'm stirred up and I'm challenging you today. Get involved, do something. Be actively a part of, number one, serving to make our Sunday services awesome. I mean, do something. I mean, you gotta force yourself to put a go in your Sunday attendance. There's got to be some go, something that you're saying, I'm helping to introduce people to the real Jesus. I'm a part of our vision statement, and I'm a part of the mission by doing church with excellence, and I'm going to do it by getting involved, by doing something, by actively being a part of serving to make our Sunday services awesome, and by praying and telling people who don't know Jesus about how they can log on online or how they can join us for our outdoor services. So number one, listen, I want you to help us do church with excellence. I want you to get connected by starting to do life together. Number two, which is this: get connected and start doing life together in a small group. That's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to join an outdoor group, and if you don't know where they are, I'm going to let you know all about them. Join an indoor group. We got prayer groups, and we do have groups that are very small and social distance, and they're meeting indoors. Or I'm asking you to join a Zoom group. Help me start one, lead one. Come on. We can no longer be disconnected. I'm challenging you. I can't stand it any longer. You got to get connected in a small group on a weekly basis. And so I'm going to be sending out a survey, a questionnaire, and it's all about how you can help us do church with excellence by saying, you know what, I'll serve in this capacity. I'll become a part of that. And listen, there's a list of them on there that but it's you helping us do church with excellence. Listen, it's not just my job, it's our job to do church with excellence. Because that's how we're going to introduce people to the real Jesus. And I'm challenging you. You can't just have your cup of coffee and sit back any longer. I need you to join us. Do something. Listen, we got to get creative in this pandemic era. But we all need to be doing something to make church excellent so that we can introduce people to the real Jesus. And then number two, I'm asking you, how can you get connected in a small group? If you're not in a small group on a weekly basis, it's time for you to join one. What, outdoor, indoor, Zoom group, whatever it is, somehow, some way, you got to get connected in a small group. Listen, I can't stand it any longer. And I'm asking you, it's time for us to get prepared to introduce people to the real Jesus. And we're going to do that by committing to do church with excellence, and I'm asking you to join me, and I'm going to send a questionnaire out, and I'm asking you to log in and put your responses. And then number two, I'm asking you, we got to start doing life together in groups. Come on, we can't grow. There's no unity when we don't have a weekly connection point. And so I'm asking you, it is time to get prepared by joining a small group and beginning to do life together in a group. Hey, church, we can do this. Man, I pray that you hear my heart today. Come on, church. Let's rise up. This is our day to be a light in a dark world. This is our day to introduce people to the real Jesus. God bless you. And when you get the questionnaire, be quick to fill it out.